Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Juan Moroni. I'm part of the External Affairs and Industry Purpose program at the GSMA, and I will be presenting the GSMA We Care initiative. So once again, thank you so much, and thank you so much to the great team from the Paris Peace Forum that have been working tirelessly in order to deliver this forum. Also, please feel free to drop any questions you might have during the presentation on the chat function. At the end of this session, we will have a brief Q&A, so I will be able to address all of them. So if we could please have the presentation. Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned before, what I will be presenting is the GSMA We Care initiative. If we can please go to the next slide. So for those of you who are not familiar with the GSMA, we are an association that represents the interest of the mobile operators worldwide. We unite more than 750 operators with almost 400 companies in the broader mobile ecosystem. This includes handsets and device makers, software companies, equipment providers, internet companies, as well as organizations in adjacent industry sectors. So the GSMA also produces the industry-leading MWC events, which are held under normal non-pandemic circumstances annually in Barcelona, Los Angeles, and Shanghai, as well as the Mobile 360 series of regional conferences. So during this COVID-19 pandemic, we launched a series of virtual events called GSMA Thrive. So I highly encourage you to register to our next Thrive, which will take place on December 1st until December 3rd, and which will have a focus on Latin America. You can easily register for free on gsmathrive.com. So if we can please go to the next slide. So first of all, and as a way of introduction and as a way for me to set the scene, I just wanted to share with you some insight onto the reach of mobile technology and its ability to transform lives for the better. So by the end of 2019, 2.5 billion mobile users were active, which accounts for 67% of the global population. So if we focus on mobile internet connectivity, only in 2019, 260 million people were connected to the mobile internet for the first time, which brought the total of people connecting globally to the mobile internet to 3.8 billion. Just to give you an idea, so by the end of 2019, over 4.1 billion people, or a little bit more than 53% of the global population, were actually using the internet. So if we compare that number to the number that I just mentioned, it means that almost 93% of those people were actually connecting to the internet through a mobile connection. These numbers are expected to keep growing, so the importance of the mobile industry will continue to grow. We expect that by 2025 we will have 5.8 billion people using mobile services, which accounts for which will account for 70% of the global population, and 61% of the global population will actually be connected to the internet through a mobile connection. So if we can please move to the next slide. So, but actually all these numbers, how do they actually translate into, let's say, socioeconomic impact? So I compiled a couple of figures here. So you can see that the mobile industry has a very significant let's say, contribution to the global GDP, also to reducing poverty, as well as in global employment. And also, and very important in this, in the current context, where climate change is becoming such a pressing issue, the use of mobile technologies actually enable a global reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, which actually is 10 times higher than the global carbon footprint of the mobile industry itself. So just to give you and let's say a feel of the magnitude of the enablement effect that the industry has on that front. But also, I think that the benefits of the mobile, let's say, technology is something that we live on a daily basis, because at the end we work day to day with our mobile devices. We get to access information, and maybe now in this context, more importantly, we get to connect with our loved ones. So it's quite relevant now in this time where social distancing and lockdowns are being implemented worldwide. So our role at the GSMA is to actually to unlock the power of connectivity so that people, industry, and society can thrive. Back in 2016, the mobile industry became the world's first industry to commit to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the importance of a proactive multi-stakeholder collaboration actually since then has actually increased. So collaboration is crucial for the success in the digital transformation of society, and the mobile industry has actually a demonstrable track record of effective collaborations that has delivered a positive change. I'm actually mentioning this because if we please move to the next slide. I'm actually mentioning this because as a key enabler of the digital age, the mobile industry has this responsibility to preserve and to protect consumer trust to enable a prosperous future for all. So we actually believe that fortifying the trust of all consumers is imperative in creating an imperative digital society. So in order to contribute to achieve this goal, we have developed the We Care initiative, which is the initiative that I wanted to, that I will be presenting here now. So what is the We Care initiative? So the We Care is a multi-stakeholder platform where all the mobile operators in a specific market join forces as an industry with policymakers in order to allow the mobile phones and the mobile networks to provide various solutions to social problems. So, as I was mentioning before, the close collaboration between the public and the private sector is key to create and to maintain an environment that supports data-driven economic growth while advancing society and building trust in digital services. So, the We Care model has three main criteria. So the first criteria is about delivering a positive impact on society and committing to a project measurement plan. The second criteria is about the proactive participation and agreement from all mobile operators in the market and the endorsement from a local government institution. It's very important to highlight that all the local mobile operators should participate, regardless of the market share that they might have. So, and why this is important is actually important because when we develop this initiative, all the industry is coming together to collaborate with the government. And last but not least, the third criteria is about the launch of the project itself, which usually takes the form of a press conference usually a press conference with the local press and the media. So here the key objective is to ensure that the public and the key influencers are aware of this initiative. And why is this important? This is important because in this way we can actually maximize the impact of the initiative. So the overall objectives of the model is to amplify societal impact and to fortify trust in the digital services, and not only to build a positive dialogue with the public sector and the mobile industry, but also to build a long-lasting public-private partnership. So if we can please move to the next slide. So you might be wondering, okay, but what the projects themselves are about. So we actually cover a broad range of topics that are relevant for our digital era. It's also important to highlight here that the topics are not fixed, in the sense that this is a demand-driven initiative, meaning that we have a set of topics that are dynamic in order for them to actually to address the pressing issues that might arise. Just to give you an example, assistive tech, for example, and transparency are topics that we have added recently. And also, it's very important to highlight the fact that the GSMA has actually a team of experts in each one of these topics, so we are able to deliver the most impact. So if we please move to the next slide. So we carry figures. So the initiative was initially launched in February 2014. Since then, we have delivered 30 weaker projects, which have impacted 8 SDGs, ranging from partnership for the goals all the way to gender equality, to climate action. 70 mobile network operators have been involved, and more than 30 governmental institutions across the 21 countries where we have implemented projects have been involved, ranging from ministries of ICTs, Interior, telecommunication regulatory authorities, etc. If we can please move to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, WeCare was launched back in February 2014. It was initially focused on Latin America, where the initiative was launched in 16 countries in that region. But at the end of 2018, we actually decided to replicate this model in order to implement it in different regions. So here I have just compiled some examples of the projects that have been implemented in 2019, 2020 in other regions than Latin America. For example, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we implemented a WeCare project in Rwanda, where mobile operators, supported by the Ministry of ICTs and Innovation of Rwanda, joined forces in order to drive mobile internet adoption and to increase digital literacy. We did this by using the GSMA mobile internet skills training toolkit in order to facilitate the operators to train their sales agents, and to ultimately be able to educate customers on how to access mobile internet services. One example from the Asia Pacific region, it's the WeCare that we launched in South Korea, where mobile operators implemented the GSMA device registry in order to allow them to block reported lost and stolen phones. This actually allows for these devices to be blocked not only in their country, in this case South Korea, but also globally. And last but not least, we launched a WeCare in Tunisia, which was about disaster response. I'm not going to mention anything else here because if we go to the next slide, please. We are actually going to deep dive into the WCARE that we developed in Tunisia in order for you to get a more, let's say, accurate idea of how one specific WCARE project looks like. So if we please move to the next slide. So as I mentioned before, the WCARE projects are demand-driven. So the situation in Tunisia is that regretfully the country regularly suffers from flooding, which comes from usually from heavy rains, which in some cases causes loss of life as well as serious material damages. So last year, all the local mobile operators and the Tunisian government identified these topics, so disaster response as a priority subject for Tunisian citizens. And we all came together in order to join forces under the WCARE model in order to put in place a mechanism in order to provide targeted information in a timely manner before and during the flooding to the citizens. So if we move to the next slide, please. So the mechanism in itself it's quite straightforward. However, the challenging part comes because it's actually entailed the close collaboration of different stakeholders. So the way that it works in terms of the process is when a major risk is identified, the national or the regional meteorological committee is actually notifying the Ministry of Interior, and the Ministry of Interior will assess the risk, and they will send a notification to all of the mobile operators based on the recommendations from the national or the regional natural disaster committees. And these notifications will include the content of the alert to be broadcasted and the location of the areas which are compromised. So once the operators receive that notification, they will send an SMS alert on behalf of the government to the citizens in those affected areas. So as I mentioned before here, the objective is to send the citizens in a timely and targeted manner the information for them to better anticipate these disasters in order to mitigate risks. And so if, as I mentioned before, the information comes before in order to mitigate the risk, and the kind of information that they receive is it depends on the content, on the context, on the particular, let's say, situation. But for example, is what they should do, etc. So if we move to the next slide, please. So the other thing that I mentioned as part of the first criteria, I mentioned that measurement is very important. So we measure on two different fronts. So on a quantitative, let's say, side, on a qualitative side. So on the first one, we actually measure the lead time for the end-to-end process. We also measure the reach with the total numbers of SMEs sent and the rate of SMEs received. And on the qualitative indicators, we include, for example, the media coverage and some users' testimonies, and in order to somehow measure the awareness that the initiative has raised, and also to get some feedback that is always useful. So if we move to the next slide, please. Also, as you can see in this slide, the senior representatives from the public and the private sectors are actually involved and join forces under the WeCare initiative. So in a project like this, collaboration between the public and the private sector is actually crucial for the success. And as I also mentioned, the mobile industry has a track record of effective collaboration in order to deliver positive change. If we could please move to the next slide. So again, collaboration is key for such project, and under this specific project, we had the chance to provide a multi-stakeholder platform in order to bounce ideas, shape good practices, and facilitate continued dialogue in order to strengthen the trust in the mobile services. Not only in the specific in this specific case in the Tunisian market, but in the development of these projects, we were also engaged with operators from Sri Lanka, Nepal, the Philippines, as well as international organizations like, for example, the International Telecommunications Cluster. So as you can see, this multi-stakeholder collaboration and this multilateral, let's say, approach that the forum is promoting, it's actually key in this kind of models. So if we move to the next slide, please. So as to wrap up, and as I mentioned as part of the third criteria, to actually mark this collaboration, last January we made a public announcement during a press conference with the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Communication Technologies, and the 3 mobile operators working in the Tunisian market. So, and as I mentioned before as well, the main objective was actually to ensure that the public and the key influencers are aware of the initiative in order to build trust on the digital services, but also to maximize the awareness that the people have about this project, ultimately to maximize its impact. So I maybe just to wrap up related to the WeCare initiative as a whole here. As you can see, there is a huge commitment from all the stakeholders. So that's brilliant. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we launched the initiative at the beginning of the year. So as we are all aware, the current, let's say, COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on any project. So although that was the case as well for these projects, we finally managed to complete all the outstanding technical and legal elements, and we hope that the service will be live before the end of this year. So if we can please move to the next slide. So I wanted to thank you so much for your attention. I hope it was informative. We will be here in our virtual stand for the 3 days of the forum. So please feel free to reach out to me or to Usman if you have any questions or anything related to the project. So I think that we can move on to the Q&A. So let's see. So we have a couple of questions here. I will try to answer them all. So was it easy to convince mobile operators to join the initiative? Do you want to attract new mobile operators in the initiative? That's a great question. So as I mentioned before, the initiative itself is demand-driven. So in most of the cases, there is a specific demand to develop a project around some of the topics. So the mobile operators are quite proactive, and I think that the current situation is a perfect testimony of how critical the services that they are providing are. At the end, in this time, we are relying more than ever on connectivity, as I mentioned before, in order to be able to connect to our loved ones, to keep on working. So and this situation has also proven that all the effort investment that they have placed into the networks, they have done such a good job that even in such a extreme situation where the networks were, let's say, flooded with an unprecedented traffic, that networks show that they were incredibly resilient. So it's a huge testimony, I think. On the second question, do you want to attract new mobile operators into the initiative? Absolutely. I mean, we're always of course happy to launch new projects. We have several projects on the pipeline. So we are actually happy to receiving any let's say request and to establish dialogue in order to launch any other project. So moving on, beyond local projects, do you think change needs to occur within the industry? For example, ensure better wealth distribution, pay, social protection for the workers, carbon footprint. Well, as I mentioned, just to give an example, I mentioned, for example, related to climate change. At the end, the industry has this enablement effect. So it's actually helping other industries in order to reduce their carbon footprint in a level which is actually 10 times higher than the footprint of the industry itself. And on top of that, several mobile network operators have actually or are actually committing to very ambitious targets. So yeah, so we are actually running out of time. So please feel free to stop by our virtual stand. I'm more than happy to answer any questions there and to arrange a call in order to make a more, let's say, bi-directional dialogue. So once again, thank you so much for attending this speech. I hope that it was informative, and hope you see you all in our virtual stand. Thank you so much.